Employees of escape rooms, what is the most incorrect thing someone has attempted to do to escape? Not an employee but played one with friends. So we have several ink pots and an inkwell. My logical thought is, the ink goes in the inkwell. I voice this thought. My friends discuss. The help screen flashes with, where does the ink belong on a desk? There is only one desk. Apparently the desk drawer is where the full ink pots belong according to my friends, not being emptied into the inkwell on it. The next clue after another 10 minutes of me arguing my case and getting a response of, but it might be wrong and it might damage the desk, is, the ink belongs in the inkwell. I told you so, but no, there must be another inkwell in the room. That one's too well exposed. Let's check under the table. Next thing we hear is a glorious voice from above which sounds like it's trying not to laugh and says, the ink goes in the inkwell on the desk. Your friend has been correct in her argument for the past 10 minutes. Thank you for the entertainment. One room I did in New York had a cell phone as a part of the room. There was a number that needed to be called at some point. It was just a cheap burner type phone and a fishbowl full of water. You can probably do the math. Just poor planning on their part, if you ask me. Another time in Boston they had to brief us because the group just before ours had ripped a prop, some kind of Egyptian pharaoh head that cast light, off its post, and we wouldn't be able to solve the clue it was supposed to cast. Don't know what the group thought was inside it besides a light bulb. Edit. I can't grammar late at night it seems. I can't do the math. I went to my first escape room this week. We were waiting in the hallway for the game master for half an hour because she was late. I thought this is a part of the game. So we tried to find a key to the main entrance. My friend indeed found a key. I tried to open the door and it did. The lights inside were off and it looked like a reception room. Confused, I called the owner of the room and asked if this was part of the game. He was more confused than me, didn't know what I was talking about and thought this was a joke. He told me we're the first who thought of that and that the game master is on its way. Still can't believe we broke into a room thinking it was a game. My very first escape room. I clocked myself in the face almost immediately. Just took a filing cabinet corner to the eye like 3 minutes in. Lights were off. Heard soft laughter and an "are you okay" over the speaker. Was planning on pretending it never happened and dude blew my whole spot up, lol. Not an employee, but my dad has a funny story about his failure in one. For context, my dad loves lateral thinking questions, puzzles and riddles to the point where he has rapidly solved them in competitive scenarios. So he and some colleagues at work are put in one with a safe. My dad ends up finding the books in the room somehow aligned to geographic coordinates, and he and his workmates go down this crazy pan-global rabbit hole. Apparently one of the employees ended up telling them over intercom that the minimum age for the room is 5 and they were massively overthinking it. Turned out the safe lock was underneath the table they were calculating on. A girl took a bobby pin out from her own hair and put it in an outlet. Sparks flew. Somehow she didn't hurt herself, but the game computer was damaged. I now have to tell grown but adults to please not put metal objects in outlets. This looks a lot dumber until you've seen the post by an employee in this very thread saying they did have one room where sticking a prop fork into an outlet was unironically the solution. Not an employee but an escapee. I was trying to unlock a picture frame, behind which was a clue. My mate walked up and while I was fiddling with it pulled it off the wall. He thought it just swung open and applied a little too much force. However, I cannot understand why he ignored the fact I was trying to unlock it. We were all mortified. This didn't happen to me, but I was watching on the live camera, cracking up. My co-worker was taking a group of older folks into one of our newer rooms and briefing them. As my co-worker is briefing these people, randomly one of them drops their pants, and there was another pair of pants under those pants. They just stood there with their first layer of pants down. Then after a few seconds simultaneously another one pulls their pants down and the other one pulls their pants back up. Same situation, more pants under pants. After my co-worker is done briefing, the other person pulls their pants back up and they go on their merry way solving puzzles. My co-worker had no idea that this was happening as he was briefing them. I suppose since it was a newer room and he was still trying to remember what to tell them not to break. And it was 6 older people and it was only 2 of them that did it and they weren't right in front of him. It was one of the most bizarre things I have seen. Still unsure what they were trying to accomplish. They didn't escape either. They were being debriefed. We have an escape room called Alcatraz, where they start in locked cells and have to solve a puzzle to get out. That's step 1. We've had people literally try and dig their way through the walls. Must be too immersive. I don't go anywhere without my rock hammer and my Rita Hayworth poster. I somehow ended up with Miso and a group of older women who were there for a convention and who were doing it as a team building exercise. They were so much older than me and Miso and also there for the convention, so we felt too uncomfortable telling them to maybe try out other methods. They kept trying the same things over and over and laughing. It was still highly entertaining and fun though. Afterwards the employee said it was one of the most entertaining attempts he had seen. I'm a manager of an escape room branch, so I have a good few stories, but one of the best was when a hen party pulled a sealed plug socket off the wall, exposing some now broken wires, and they then proceeded to touch the exposed ends together. Fair to say none of the staff could get there in time before they created a massive spark and the maid of honor electrocuted herself. They escaped in record time because we kicked them out. We were in a holiday themed room where you needed to change your names from the naughty list inside Santa's office. Well, you get shut in and have to find a way out. There's a computer in the room that we turn on and there are some files on it that helped us unlock a puzzle. Great, computer done, let's still fiddle with everything else. This room had you use everything. Literally everything in it. Very cool design, but it led to an issue. We had a toy train that had to have some sort of clue to it. We tried putting in different combos to a lock that told us to use the toy in the room. We tried counting the wheels, the windows on the train, things like that. We couldn't figure it out. The game master comes in and says, "Why did you keep using the train after you found the flash drive with the files?" He comes over, removes part of the train, and there's a flash drive. He asks, "Why did we put it back? We never found it." The group before dragged the files onto the computer that we used. My mom took the key to the locker where we lock up our personal belongings outside of the room before the game and stuck it into one of the locks in the room. It got stuck and wouldn't come out, and the employee had to go down the street to a hardware store to buy bolt cutters to break the lock. He basically indicated that we were the stupidest customers they'd ever had. Not an employee, but my own stupidity that actually worked. Which is made even better by the fact that this escape room was a team building exercise with people I didn't know all that well. The room required you to find a wire and connect 2 panels on the walls to complete an electrical circuit, revealing the next clue. Not knowing where said wire was, I decided to point out that humans conduct electricity. Then I convinced everyone to hold hands and told the people on each end to touch the panels. Out came the next clue and we were on with the rest of the escape room. Never found a wire, never bothered either. Afterwards, the employee asked us about it and I'm not sure if he thought we were the smartest or the dumbest escapees ever. Pretty sure that's exactly what you're supposed to do there. I run a kids escape room and they're all obsessed with trash, like one half of a sticker that got tracked in from outside. Also, one kid yesterday found a pebble and constructed a whole narrative about why he thought it was the ultimate clue. I had to tell them that the pebble was not, in fact, the path to escape. I'm dying. I'd love more stories about the kids' escape room. Not an employee, but I was the dumb guy. We thought the escape room started and so we also immediately started searching for clues. This was when the video ended. Apparently it was just an introduction video. When the employee came back into the room I was literally searching a plant. My sister and her co-workers went to an escape room, and while everyone else was looking for clues, she got frustrated. She went over to the door and whipped it open. An employee was at the desk on the other side and she got all excited, asking, "Wow, did I solve it all by myself?" The answer was no. The employee said that their fire code dictated no patron could be officially locked in. She's a simple girl. My group once lost 20 minutes trying to figure out a coded puzzle because we put one person in charge of the colored levers you had to pull that each corresponded to a piece of the code. That was my brother, and after 20 minutes of failure to complete it, I remembered he was colorblind. I did one escape room and we were given a hint to check under a chair, so I flipped it over with my foot very suddenly and the employee goes, "Please don't break our chairs," and I felt bad after. Flipped it over with my foot. That sounds suspiciously similar to a kick. Not a game master, but this one time my friends and I were in a space-themed dungeon and had an hour to get out. Right next to the main exit door was a keypad, and I just typed in 42. The very second the Gamma Master left, voila, the freaking door opened and I had absolutely no reason to hit 42, save a vague thought of the room being space-themed and a reference to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Needless to say, my friends weren't amused and the stingy game master didn't let us restart the game. How did they not think someone might guess that? Had some really weird people. First story was people absolutely smashing the time record for that room because they had one guy that could simply crack a number lock open. He said he's doing that all the time, so he just went straight to that lock, which was the last locker of that room, and cracked it in about 20 seconds. Other story was a group that had solved almost the entire room and just had to find one more piece of a puzzle. Instead of properly searching, they suddenly started to screw around and one almost hung himself on a gallows in that room, as death could have been the escape. Last but not least, 3 very rich kids that my boss instructed me to give a special treatment. They were so lazy and not willing to do anything on their own, so I basically had to solve the first 4 riddles for them. In the second room there was an alarm going off, which means you have to go back and deactivate it, but instead they just kept walking and brute forced open the door leading to the other room. I interviewed for a job at an escape room. They told me that after a few groups did it, they had to make one their main rules. They say every time to not stick things in electrical outlets. Not an employee, but did a room where we started in a corridor with 4 doors. 1 had a handle, 3 had keypads. Naturally my friend tried to pull the handle door first but it didn't open. We spent 5 minutes trying to look for clues and guess codes until we got fed up and asked for a hint. It's not a pull door. Used to work at an escape room, so a few things. A man brought a screwdriver and popped a few electric sockets off of the walls, just in case. At one point in the room the players are given a wire to connect 2 points on a very obviously specified board. Player decided to unscrew a light bulb and connect the board in the lights outlet. Fried the whole building circuit. Created a panic and we had to evacuate just to be safe. In the room there is a stuffed deer head on one wall. Nothing at any point indicated the animal head in any way for anything, but when people got stuck bad, they'd try and talk to the head. Most thought it was some secret voice activated robot head which would talk back, which would have been cool. One player read a whole book in the bookshelf because he was convinced it would have a clue in it. The room was Da Vinci themed and he found a book titled Da Vinci. Obviously he skimmed a few pages, but when we'd figured it out without his help, he insisted we'd missed a clue. The guy that worked there could barely speak for laughing when we came out. Also not in my group, but a guy from another group kicked his foot through the door to their room about 10 minutes into their room. So some friends of mine went to an escape room. There's a temple in the room. The instructions said something along the lines of worship the god, which was supposed to mean turn the statue towards the god picture. My friends all held hands and got down on their knees in front of the statue. They thought they were completely right. Took them a solid 5 minutes to figure out they were doing something wrong. After they finished the room they walked out and the employees were both laughing and shocked. Apparently they'd never seen anyone do that before. Wish I could have seen it. My wife in an escape room once found a code for the final lock that did not exist. We were stuck maybe halfway through our time all trying to figure out what was next when she called out a 4-digit code. The only thing we had left with 4 digits was the final door, so we tried it and it worked. The workers came in and were very confused as to how we got out. My wife explained that using the checkerboard that had glued down pieces, she counted all the red checkers, then all the black, then the red kings, then the black kings to come up with the code. All the workers said that's not the clue and explained to us what we were supposed to do, which was half a dozen steps away from where we were, and that the checkerboard was just a proper time suck that meant absolutely nothing, or so they thought. Turns out we could have beat that room in about a minute if she would have started with the checkerboard. Not an employee, but it's so annoying when work on a major puzzle for a long time and finally told it doesn't currently work. Tell us ahead of time. I did a Houdini themed escape room about a year ago, and the last puzzle was to figure out how to open a safe without the combination. The trick was to use some key item that was a magnet and the safe would spring open, as we later found out. My wife and I, however, were eyeing up some tools such as lockpicks and the like, and we decided to use one as a flathead screwdriver and dismantle the hinges on said safe, and presto, we kind of won, lol. Friend of mine was an escape room master. His worst was a group of guys and their girlfriends who were really excited to play. They listened to the whole don't break the room spiel and all the warnings. My friend starts to hype them up. They proceed to get hype. They're at the entry door all excited. Door unlocks and one guy screams, runs into the room, and drop kicks the first wall he comes across, plowing right through the drywall. Actual pandemonium breaks out as he continues tearing through the drywall and the girls just start screaming. The other guys don't try to stop him. They just begin shouting about finding clues and tearing the room apart looking for clues. With no context of what they were looking for, they were quickly removed. Not an employee. A few years back, my partner and I were in suburban DC with her family and went to an escape room. It wasn't our first but might have been theirs. We figured out how to escape in about 5 minutes. No exaggeration. Escape rooms are generally built around solving a puzzle. This one included. In this case, we figured out the last step in the puzzle before the first. We decided to try and solve all of the remaining puzzles in 55 minutes. After all, we paid for the full hour. I have a pretty tall friend, and while we were all working out a puzzle, he saw a key hanging above the door and just reached out and grabbed it, put it on a table and forgot about it. About 15 minutes later, we couldn't figure out what we were supposed to do, so he remembered about the key, grabbed it and just casually opened the door with it. We got out and the organizer was absolutely confused about what happened. This was about 20 minutes in a 1H 15 minutes room. Turns out that key was attached to a magnet and was supposed to pop off when we completed the final puzzle. So we just went back in, put the key back up and continued with the room. Not an employee, but my parents heard a story from one. There was a pipe in the ground, which was concrete. For whatever reason, someone managed to rip it out of the ground, although they weren't sure how they did that to begin with. Concrete is very strong in compression, but isn't meant to deal with tension. At this point, I legitimately cannot remember if a friend told me this or if I read it in another Reddit post, but guy gets asked by friend if he wants to test out an escape room designed by friend's friend. The theme is US history. The clock starts and guy goes to look at the lock on the door. It takes a 4-digit code, so he enters 1492 and it pops right open. That was the final puzzle and they all escaped in under a minute. Friend's friend was P. I did a room once that involved multiple rooms, each with locks on them. There was a main room that had the bulk of the puzzles. We opened the door from there to the last room, but the puzzle I was working on wasn't done yet. I assumed we would need it solved for something. It involved an old counterbalance type scale. The problem was that the slide on it for precision weighing wasn't stuck in a position. Without knowing where it was supposed to be, I couldn't figure out a way to solve it. All of a sudden the employee comes in and says I can stop cause we got out. Turns out one of the guys decided to just brute force the last lock. He was just going through every combo and randomly got it right. Turns out we needed the puzzle I was on. Also turns out the slide was supposed to be soldered in place. Employee says, oh, they haven't fixed that yet? Yeah, you were doing it right, but the slide needs to be in a specific spot. It was pretty annoying. They knew it's an issue and just didn't fix it. I was in an escape room in Russia. It was prison break room, and my sister managed to escape because she was thin enough to pass through the door. Mad gulag skills. Yesterday I had a group that were so stupid they were still on the first puzzle after 40 minutes. I said to one of them the code is 4242. He responded, no it's not, frick off. Needless to say they did not escape. We went to one and was struggling getting started, so I guessed at a combination in a briefcase. It gave us a key. Tried it and everything but ended up finding the right clues and going through it in order. The briefcase was the last clue. I'd had the key to the exit door in my hand the whole time. Not an employee. I broke a puzzle and messed up the whole sequence of the hard room at the place my friends and I went to by solving a weak cipher. We were supposed to find a code wheel before solving the cipher, but I just solved it with pen and paper provided in the room, allowing us to skip at least one clue to the final solution. The employees started talking to us over the radio because they were confused as to how we had gotten to where we were. The cipher was just simple substitution, and the plain text spelled a thematically appropriate word for the room. I was confused by the employees' confusion, because from my perspective I had done the obvious thing and solved the puzzle correctly. After the room was over, they actually took me back in alone to show them how I solved it, since apparently I was the first person in there who's ever read a book on cryptography. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.